170 countries. Since 2016, VivaTech has grown into Europe's landmark innovation event, where we don't just celebrate innovation, we take it a step further. We decide what is next. Now, for everyone watching us online, welcome. And so do tell your friends, colleagues, and anyone else who forgot to book a ticket that they can also watch us live via vivatech.com/live. Now, over the years, this stage has seen some pretty memorable guests. We've had Mark Zuckerberg, we've had Elon Musk, we had Huang from NVIDIA. And this year, we're going even bigger, and we're adding a few more names to that list. Now, we've also spent a decade spotlighting countries going above and beyond innovation. We've had Canada and Japan in past recent years, and this year, the big winner is Germany. So do keep an eye out for their booth in the exhibition hall. Trust me, it's some pretty incredible prices. And some of your seats. So go ahead, check, take a look, see if you're one of the lucky ones. Check carefully and show us if you are a winner. Oh, we found one right here. Okay, we found one here. Is there another one? Not yet. Okay, so do redeem those prizes. I'm really curious to see what you won. Now, for those of you who, oh, there's another one there. You have a ticket, great. Okay, for those of you who didn't get a ticket, well, you're still at VivaTech, right? So I think that's a pretty good consolation prize right there. Because, I mean, here, more seriously, whether this is your 10th VivaTech or your first, this is a stage where we have the conversations that matter. And I'm talking from AI and digital sovereignty to talent, finance, and the future of business, all alongside the brightest minds. Speaking of which, what a better topic to start the morning with something that affects us all. I'm talking about money. Now, the way money moves is changing faster than we can ever realize. Stablecoins, tokenization, digital financial rails, all terms that sounded like buzzwords years ago, but that today they're being taken very, very seriously by the largest financial institutions. To explore where this is all headed, we're joined by two people helping shape that future. And I'm talking about Jeremy Allaire, CEO of The Circle, and Rob Goldstein, CEO of BlackRock. Now pay attention carefully, because this is more than just a crypto story. This is a conversation of the future architecture of finance. That said, do prepare to welcome Jeremy, Rob, and Arjun to the stage.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you all for joining us. Look at this, full house, day one. Absolutely incredible energy here. Let's kick off this discussion. Rob, can I start with you? You've described finance as entering another major infrastructure transition. What effectively does that look like for you, and what's changed to allow that to happen now?
We're starting with the simple questions?
Yeah.
Is that what's happening?
Simple questions.
Can you guys hear me okay? No.
We're just having some audio issues. Rob's mic, try again.
Can you guys hear me okay now?
No.
This technology thing never seems to work.
Whilst we get a mic, here it comes. Amazing.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me now?
There we go.
Okay. Awesome. So I think if we take a step back, and it's like what we were talking about earlier, As the technology reporter, we're here talking about digital assets. And I'm very deliberate in calling it digital assets, not crypto, not blockchain, because effectively, you have a better, faster, cheaper technology innovation that could solve real-world problems today. I think that one of the big traps that people often fall into is they assume it's binary, that tomorrow everything is going to switch. The capital markets are almost $200 trillion, that they'll just magically switch to this new infrastructure. It'll be much more gradual than that, but there are many use cases and many opportunities where the underlying technology of digital assets, the underlying technology of crypto, enable efficiencies. And some of them are very basic, even moving cash, which obviously we have the world's leading expert on, but even moving cash today is shockingly cumbersome, and this provides an opportunity to take out those frictions.
Jeremy, based on what Rob says, when we talk, and you often talk about the internet financial system, what are the technologies that are enabling this? And sort of big picture, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's been an interesting evolution. We got started building in this space like 13 years ago, and the technology was very primitive. I think kind of fast forward to where we are today, one of the ideas that we had very early was that these networks, blockchain networks, would basically become operating systems. And I think, at a conference like Viva Tech, it's always about what are the new platforms, what are the new devices, what are the new paradigms. We've seen this maturation, and we're now at a point where these are economic operating systems. They're general purpose computers that can run economic activity. That can mean the sort of representation of value, these assets. It can mean the contracts that actually go into commerce, go into financial arrangements. It can mean, the economy is governed, there's governance. All these things can be basically brought and built on these new systems. And I think from a technology perspective, we're now in the 4th generation of that. We've seen a maturation, sort of like we went from, personal computers to mobile. We went from dial-up to broadband. We're in this new capacity. Last thing I would note, though, is that what's happening right now is this collision between operating systems for intelligence and economic operating systems, and these are colliding. And the force of that collision, I think, is going to create one of the most dramatic new platform shifts in the history of technology, in the history of the internet, and in the history of the global economy.
Just unpack that a bit, Jeremy. What you're alluding to here is the rise of agentic AI. We hear a lot about these agents that are able to perhaps work slightly more autonomously, able to carry out complex tasks on our behalf. You talked about this collision between the two worlds. What does that mean in practice in terms of where things like USDC, where the blockchain fits into all of this?
I mean, essentially, if you look at what's happening right now, and this is accelerating at an extraordinary pace, cognitive work is being broken down into AI agents. And cognitive work is the substance of most modern corporations. It is the substance of basically all professional services firms. And cognitive work powers an enormous amount of the economy. That work is going to be transformed into agents, and those agents are going to be highly specialized, and those agents are going to collaborate with each other, they're going to transact with each other, they're going to enter into economic contracts with each other within boundaries of a corporation and across the boundaries of a corporation, and you need an infrastructure to do that. You need an infrastructure to actually settle those contracts that is something that everyone can see and trust and validate and audit, and you need money that works at agent scale. You need money that can move at the speed of the internet, fractions of a second. And the economics of this are very different. The inference cost for a specialized agent doing, say, intellectual property analysis, pick some category, might be 5 cents. It might be 10 cents. It might be $1. And so you need an economic system that can support that. And so it's that kind of connection between those two worlds that we see as accelerative to the adoption of things like stablecoins, blockchain networks more broadly.
And if I could just add on that, because I think one of the terms that used to be used all the time a few years ago and has sort of faded away a bit is the concept of a smart contract.
Yeah.
And if you think about what's happened through the new agentic AI and just broadly through language-based AI, is one of the primary use cases is it could read and it could write. So the smart contract was effectively codifying something that would require a human to interpret and then putting it into code. So if you just put a fine point on it, you could take the code and you could use it to have economic value transfer. In a world where you have agents doing activity, they're not going to log into a bank account. They're not going to go to the web, log into a bank account, and move money. They need their own set of rails. So I actually, where Jeremy and I may have a slightly different perspective, I don't think it's a collision. I think they're force multipliers.
Yes, and it is like a particle collision. It makes a big bang.
Well, nuclear. They're like two sides of the same coin. And the whole concept of a smart contract, I think, was looking for more use cases. I think AI is the ultimate use case.
So smart contracts will still exist,
Yes.
but with the
Smart contracts will effectively be what the agents create
right.
to manage and monitor and supervise value transfer.
What does that mean then for this journey? Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Like, let me give you a direct
Yeah.
example. My daughter just graduated university. I had the job of having all the parents give me the money for rent for the house that she shared with other girls, and then paying it to the landlord. The reality is that's crazy that it requires everyone to do that every month. As opposed to you take a lease, you put it in one of these language models, let's say ChatGPT, you ask it, is this a good lease? What should I change? And then it comes back, you manage it, it says this is a good lease, and then you say, pay it, effectively create a mechanism such that you're paying the rent, you're asking other people for the money they need to contribute, and all of that happens automatically, consistent with the contract.
Completely, yeah. We have this concept of generative AI, and it generates code, it generates written content, but generative contracts will be possible, and because AI can write code perfectly, nearly, effectively, like these generative contracts will exist, and you'll be able to take intent. The intent is this economic arrangement. This example I think that you've given is a great example, Rob, and allow that to be expressed. And that could be in a trade relationship, it could be in a commercial or personal, et cetera. So I think we're at the very, very early stages of an explosion in smart contracts, actually, because of generative AI.
So that's fascinating. What does that ultimately do? I've been covering digital assets for about 10 years or so. The word tokenization has been in that industry for a very large part of that. And there's always been this promise towards tokenization. Given what you've been saying both about AI agents, about smart contracts, and sort of this growth we're seeing, what does that ultimately now mean for real-world tokenization? We started with money. What's next, and what does AI and these improving technologies mean for the ability to scale tokenization in financial markets?
Yeah, I'll go first, and then Jeremy could go. First, I think we haven't yet started the actual activity of tokenization. And it's very interesting because I think if you look at the headlines relative to the actual values, there's a huge gap. So this hasn't yet started. I think, ironically, cash is such a good starting point. And by cash, I don't just mean transferring currencies. I also mean money market funds and a variety of other cash-like instruments. It's such a good starting point because there are a shocking number of frictions. But I think ultimately what we're going to find is two things. One, in traditional capital markets use cases, there are many opportunities where you could achieve a better, faster, cheaper outcome through tokenization. That requires a network effect that is yet to come. That will be gradual at first and then very quick at some point, but we're still not yet at the point of it being very quick. And then the second concept with regard to tokenization is I think we're going to see how new instruments can be created that used to be much more challenging, much more paper-based. Again, going back to the smart contract, whether you look in the capital markets at a structured product or whether you look at an over-the-counter derivative, all of those things are programmatic. The old way it used to be done was I send you paper, you program it on your system, and I program it on my system. Now we're going to be sending effectively code back and forth that we share.
Yeah, I would just say in a general way, as we upgrade to these new economic operating systems, inherently, all representations of value need to be digitized. That's why I think this concept of digital assets is the right one as well, which is it's really making them accessible to these operating systems so that the programs that run on these operating systems and the contracts that intermediate those can interact. And you get the benefit of something that's open, global, accessible, interoperable, composable, so that code can interact with it. And I think on the AI layer, just as another note, one of the things that crypto has really suffered from is that the technology is very powerful, but it's hard to use. It's hard to use, and I think with generative AI, we now have this intent-based user experience. We have a voice-based user experience. We can express what we're trying to accomplish. And then all the hard stuff happens in the background. If anyone's used Codex or Claude Code or Cowork or any of these tools, it's extraordinary because an individual can express some intent and then this thing is writing code. And so I actually think tokenization, smart contracts, these underlying layers, and then the ability for people to merely express what they want to accomplish, the technology will become invisible. And these intent-based user interfaces will become more prevalent. And I think that's a breakthrough, and it makes how do you make this useful, or how do you make it safe? How do I worry about all the keys I have to manage? All that stuff disappears because the machine environment can do those extremely well. And so I think there's these intersect in some really powerful ways that, again, are force multipliers.
Do we know what the user interface for that is going to look like? Is it going to be ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, something else?
I mean, my view is that more and more these intent-based user experiences will be predominant, and they're not all necessarily running through the same universal app. And so I think the ability to use a voice-native app or a text-based, intent-based app, that's just going to become ubiquitous. And many, many apps will just begin to surface this, and you'll have multi-surface engagements with those that are context-bound. So it's not one app. It's, I think, just generally things will move towards that, and we will use fewer hardened surfaces that we interact with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you're just going to talk to your computer. You're either going to talk to it in voice, or you're going to type in instructions, and most people won't even know what they're using.
Yeah, right.
It'll come with the device.
Yeah, or my smart glasses, or my jewelry.
Or the microphone that doesn't work.
Yeah. I want to pick up on something you said, Rob, which was about the tokenization journey and how we're sort of right at the start still. And you said it's going to go slow and then it'll increase. What currently are sort of some of the barriers or the challenges that need to be overcome for real scalable tokenization to take place?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think as a starting point, we all need to realize that these are all about the network effects. And what happens is that network effects start out slow, and then you get enough participation, and they start to accelerate very rapidly. What I would observe is at this point, if we would have had this conversation 5 or 10 years ago, tokenization as a concept, digital assets, crypto, would have been something very much at odds with the traditional financial ecosystem. And to a large degree, when I say at odds, I don't mean that because I have great intuition. It was actually at odds. The whole concept was the old world is dead, long live the new world. And I think what's happened now is participants in the traditional capital markets and participants in the digital asset ecosystem, they realize that the real force multiplier is how do you actually leverage both together. So right now, I think you'd be hard-pressed if you polled 10 financial institutions. I'd be shocked if all 10 weren't working on some experimentation, pilot, something with regard to tokenization. A lot of it on the cash or money market side, a lot of it with regard to trying to tokenize private market funds, which are harder to access. But people are working on this, and at some point, that network effect will start to be achieved. My own opinion is we're probably quarters or a couple of years away from that really starting, but it's getting closer and closer.
Jeremy, you used the term operating system earlier, which I think is a really interesting way to sort of frame it. If I sort of use an analogy in the consumer electronics world, right, the two big operating systems are Android and iOS. One of the, I guess, challenges between two operating systems, sometimes they're not interoperable. And as you think about the operating system in the world of finances where banks are building on this blockchain, like Ethereum, but also on something else, and other institutions building on their own blockchain. When you think about scalability around this sort of tokenization world around blockchains, does that pose a challenge, this sort of the fragmentation of how things are being built?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think in every platform shift that we've seen, those platform shifts have tended towards 3 to 5 major platforms, whether that's cloud platforms or mobile platforms or AI foundation model platforms, lots of things, good examples in history. And I think that in the economic OS space, you'll see a similar thing emerge. There is more fragmentation than that today, but I think as we go into mainstream scaling, you'll see more of that. I think the important thing, though, is that all of this technology is built on the premise of openness and interoperability. Literally, it's all open source technology. The vast majority of these networks are being built on computer programming language and virtual machine architectures that are compatible. So if you write code for one, you could more or less reuse that code on another. And then critically, and this is key from a financial perspective, is the kind of infrastructure that provides interoperability between these platforms and networks. And that's been a place where Circle has invested massively. We now currently run the most widely adopted interoperability infrastructure for moving assets between blockchains than anything else in the world. And we're opening that up so that if I'm issuing an asset, like say a BlackRock tokenized iShare product, theoretically, right, or whatever it is, some asset, and I want that to be not just on Arc, but I want it on Canton, and I want it on Ethereum, and I want it on Solana, et cetera, that we can create a way for people to be able to move those easily and have the logic and the code around it also be compatible across these. So it's kind of the write once, run anywhere publishing model that we've seen in other platforms, but seeing that brought to the financial system as well.
And the question for both of you, what do you think the sort of landscape of digital money looks like in the future? Right now, stable coins are such a fascinating product. They digitize the dollar or the euro or a currency. You've then got your traditional cryptos in the sense of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many of the thousands of others that are out there. You've also got sort of the continued talk around central bank digital currencies. Is there a world in which all of these things are part of a future financial system?
Yes. I believe that one of the things we love, this goes back to what I said earlier, we love the answers to be binary, like yes or no. There's utility among everything you described. Do I think there will be a VivaTech token? That I'm less sure about. But at the same time, the concept of the world is a big place. If you go to India, where I know Prime Minister Modi will be here tomorrow, India, in terms of how payments work, how money works, the ability to access information, your phone effectively being your identity card, it's light years ahead of going to the United States. So when you really look at the world and how the world has developed per country, there will be very different use cases and value propositions for each component you described. I do think there's a long tail of things that some of us may have heard of, but many of us hasn't. I think that will likely compress. But I think for the primary concepts, there are great use cases depending on where you are in the world.
And Jeremy, your view?
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree. I think there are going to be scaled forms of money that are have very significant network effects, and that many software programs and people and businesses depend upon. But I think region by region, large commercial entity by large commercial entity, there are going to be many networks. There'll be many representations of money. There's going to be many non-sovereign forms of money. Bitcoin is not the only non-sovereign form of money. So I think we're still in the early days of that. But I think there are going to be forms of money that have internet scale and achieve that scale. But it's going to be heterogeneous, I have no doubt.
We've got about a minute left, so just as we close out crystal ball time, if we're sat here in a year, all three of us again, what do you think we're going to be talking about?
I think by far we're going to be talking about AI and technology being the same thing, because there won't be technology without AI and there won't be AI without technology. And I think even a question like the interoperability question, it has never been cheaper in human history to write a line of code than today. In a year, it'll be a fraction of the cost that it is today. We are going to see an explosion in the amount of technology, the amount of software, the amount of code in the world.
Jeremy?
Yeah, very aligned. I think a lot about this concept of the agentic economy and the changes in what it is to be a corporation, to create value, the decomposition of work and labor and how that's transforming every organization, the volume of output that comes from that. So I think we're going to be moving from an experimental conceptual phase to a very accelerative phase, and we'll be seeing that and talking about that in a very substantial way in a year.
Jeremy, Rob, thank you for your sharp and fascinating insights into the topic. Really appreciate it. Round of applause for our wonderful panel here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful moderation, Arjun. That was Arjun Karpal from CNBC. Now, speaking of transformation, Europe has no shortage of successful businesses. But when you look at what actually drives long-term economic strength, that is rarely the unicorn everyone's talking about. It's actually the companies that have learned to adapt through crisis, cycles, and through decades of change. And even then, they've kept growing. So the question isn't who is surviving right now. It's actually what models work over time. And to explore that, we have two very different perspectives in the room. We have a bank and we have an investor. Institutions that see the health of European businesses from completely different angles. One is financing companies day to day, and the other is betting on which ones will define the next decade. This contrast is exactly why this conversation will be so interesting. Now, please welcome Yannick Young, who leads commercial and personal banking at BNP Paribas. Philippe Botteri, a partner at Accent Ventures, which has backed some of the Europe's most successful companies. And moderating this session is Yajo Sun, EMEA VC and startup reporter at Bloomberg. So please do welcome them on stage.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Yajo. I'm a reporter at Bloomberg covering venture capital and startups, and I'm very thrilled to be joined by Philippe and Yannick, representing two very important asset allocators at various stages of a company's timeline. Topic of the day is ensuring business longevity, but I thought I would start with the news of the week, which is the US government kind of kneecapping Anthropic and blocking its latest models. Obviously, maybe I'll start with you, Yannick.
Sure.
What does one do when a foreign government can just cut off a very important utility like that?
Well, this is, to a large extent, it's pretty unprecedented. Oops. There's a bit of a Larsen effect.
Okay, I think we're good.
Right,
Yep.
that's much better. So it's a bit unprecedented, to tell you the truth, Yajan. It's the first time that the US is cutting access to technology to customers around the world, notably in Europe. So it's, I think for a lot of European companies, it's a bit of a further wake-up call on the fact that there's a pretty high level of dependency that has been built over the years.
Philippe, obviously, Anthropic is one of Excel's portfolio companies, and I'm sure that your firm might be expecting a large windfall. But on the heels of the news over the weekend, what has your discussion been like with your own portfolio companies? And what do you think? Like, do you think sovereignty right now makes for a good business case?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I would say right now that there is already a lot that can be done with models that are not best in class, right? And so you don't need the best in class model to do everything you need to do with AI today. And I think a lot of companies right now, and we see it in our portfolio, they're actively experimenting with different models and trying to find the best model for a given task, because there is no point in overpaying, and it's all about getting the right ROI. And ROI meaning that you want the cheapest cost for the results that you want to achieve. So overall, it feels like you look at the models today, and even the model that are a couple generation away can generate like amazing ROI for a lot of tasks.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the models that you're using. Are these the blend of Chinese, European, American, typically by your portfolio companies?
So which model are they using?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think they're experimenting with models are better at certain tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I think open source models, I mean, we have some great French open source models.
Sure.
But I mean, talking about Chinese open source model, then I think it creates an issue in some industries. So clearly, some regulated industries are not very keen on relying on Chinese models.
Mm-hmm.
I think open source is part of the toolkit. It has always been part of the toolkit. And if you look at software, software has always been divided between closed source company and open source company. And obviously with SaaS and cloud, I think that gave more edge to the closed source than to open source, like we saw with perpetual licenses, but still a lot of open source going on right now. And I would expect it to be the same for the model. And for some use cases and some companies, they'll prefer to use private models. And for other tasks, I think companies are going to be fine with open source. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's going to be a combination of both. And now if you ask me what the market share of each is going to be, I think I'm going to pass on this one. I think we'll see. But,
Sure. Bloomberg actually broke the news last week that Mistral is looking to fundraise, I think, around 3 billion euro at upward north of 20 billion valuation. I'm sure that figure is increasing as we speak. But I'm curious, like, what is the adoption, AI adoption at BNP Paribas?
Well, it very much echoes what Philippe was saying. It's a case of a lot of experimenting. It's a case of applying different levels of sophistication. Indeed, there are some models that are relatively simple to use and can provide a lot of added value without moving into the frontier model day one. So there's a lot of things that are happening. Typically, we're using it a lot in the coding space. We're using AI also increasingly in client interactions to have AI-enabled or AI-powered type of interactions with customers. And we're starting to apply AI also to the most industrial, labor-intensive, and data-intensive parts of our industrial setup.
Okay.
So that's, I would say it's a multi-year journey, right? There's no cliff effect. It calls for a lot of preparation. It calls for a lot of planning. And sometimes trial and error.
I think Mr. Jeff Bezos is speaking upstairs, so I'm obligated to bring up the SpaceX IPO. $2.4 trillion company. The IPO debut really didn't disappoint. So I think the calculation right now is the 8 largest U.S. companies are worth a total of 24 trillion, which begs the question: are we in a stage of rational valuations?
I think SpaceX today has become the 4th largest market cap in the US, if I'm not mistaken. It's worth huge multiples of its actual sales. It has an amazing business model with fantastic prospects. But personally, as a banker, I'm the guy with the tie, so I'm the banker. Philippe is the investor. He's the one without a tie. But as a banker, I find it difficult to justify that level of valuation. I was a tech banker in 2000 and 2001. At the time of what was now referred to as the internet bubble. And there's a little bit of feel of deja vu when you see some of the very, very hot stories. And I appreciate the massive disruption that is at work by the Anthropics or the OpenAIs of this world, or by SpaceX. They're opening entire new fields that are going to generate tens of billions of euros.
What if intelligence wasn't trapped in an app?
In the year to come. But putting a price on that is very tricky.
Okay.
Well, markets are to some extent always right, so there's a price for SpaceX. It's very high.
Philippe, is this a fundamental-driven IPO? Is it a storytelling-driven IPO? And does this sort of debut apply to other companies as well?
Well, I mean, I think what has been very interesting to observe in, I would say, the past 15 years is that the private market are becoming the new public market, and the public market are starting to behave like private market.
Yep.
And to give you an example, I mean, in 2010, we could have a software company in a portfolio which would reach, a couple $100 million in revenue. They would go public at, probably a couple billion. They would raise an IPO of 150 million. And that was success in venture at the time. That was 15 years ago. Today, a round of 150 million, that's 100% a private round.
Sure.
Right? And you see now private companies where, when you start reaching, 10 billion, 15 billion and up in market cap, there is liquidity. So to some extent, they're also behaving like public markets because you can actually buy and there's share sale in secondary, not just primary. So that's basically the dynamic we've seen in the private market. And then in the public market, I mean, yes, the valuation, they look high today, But if you look at where the valuations are coming from, they're coming from the terminal value of an asset. And when we invest in venture, the way there is no revenue, so there is no multiple. But basically, the way we think about the valuation is really thinking, what can this company be in 5, 7, 10 years from now? And then if it becomes what we think it can become, then what is the value? And then we back that in terms of risk-adjusted, what we're willing to pay today to get to this outcome. And when you look at the public market today in technology, it is very much the same. It is all about the terminal value. It is all about what do you think this company can do in 5 to 10 years from now? And if you look at where SpaceX was 10 years ago and where they are today, and you project that in the future, then how much is that worth, right?
Okay, so you're a believer in the TAM.
I'm not saying I'm a believer, but I'm saying that is now the way that people are looking at these assets. And it's very different from looking at a company and saying, well, they're growing 20% per year. If I project, is this growth sustainable for another 5, 7 years? And then profitability is going to increase slightly. So I do my cash flow valuation, and this is how much the company is worth, right? This is a totally different way to look at the public markets.
And if I may, Yajan, I think it's really a case today for very patient capital, right?
Sure.
Because of the pace at which technology is accelerating, it calls for investors to hang around for probably longer for the company to reach a certain scale and size. And when I started as a tech banker in the 1990s, I think the average duration before a company going public in the US when it was a tech startup was about 7 to 8 years. Now, I think the average in 2025 was around 15. So it's a longer hold investment. And over that period of time, that gives the company the capacity to continue to expand and grow. And in the meantime, there's an increasing amount of capital that is going into the private capital space. And if you look at the amounts that are being managed by venture capital in the US, I think it was about $1.3 trillion last year, which is in itself already a gigantic figure. And this is forecasted to grow to nearly 1.8 or 2 trillion within the next 5, 6 years. So there's going to be a lot of capital, private capital available that enable those companies to continue to grow, develop in private hands without having to go public. So we'll see more gigantic IPOs of that nature as the company mature.
Philippe, if you're one of your portfolio companies exploring a dual track approach, either going public or acquisition or buyout, what are the pros and cons? How do you walk them through the different options, and where?
I would say that you never, in venture, you just don't run a dual track. At some point, you decide that it is good for the company to be public, and then you go for it.
You do it.
You don't sell a technology company; it gets both. So it's possible that during this IPO process, a strategic will come and say, hey, we're ready, to make an offer on the table, and then we'll decide if we want to take that offer or go public. But you don't go and try to say, okay, I'm going to try and sell a company. Great company get both. They don't get sold. So if we decide to go for an IPO, we go for an IPO, and if something comes along, then it comes. But that's not, you don't proactively go and talk to strategic buyer while you pursue. Sometimes it can happen, but I would say that for great company, you don't shop them. Someone is going to come and try to take them.
Last question on SpaceX, which is, I think there's been a fair amount of criticism over how private companies have grown to such a scale. They're being valued at nearly $1 trillion in the private markets. So when retail investors finally get a hold of them, they're not really getting their money's worth. So question for the banker here. Are retail investors sort of being shortchanged in this dynamic where public and private markets are converging?
No, look, I don't think so, in the sense that at the end of the day, investors, they make educated investment decisions. So if you look at one of the early backers of SpaceX, or a very big one, take Google. So Google was an early investor in SpaceX. I don't know whether they were in the very, very early rounds, but they invested over $1 billion. Their $1 billion has become $100 billion. I'm pretty confident that anybody, private individual or investor who has bought into the IPO is
Okay.
not going to get a return of 100 times their original investment. That boat has sailed, right? So I think where you need, as a banker, to be worried is to make sure that you always pay attention to what we call suitability, meaning the investment proposal that we are bringing to a private individual has got to be commensurate in terms of risk profile and in terms of magnitude with the ability of that investor to take a hit. Right now, the SpaceX stock price is going through the roof. Great. There might be negative headlines further down the road. That means it might drop below the stock price, and we need to pay a lot of attention to investors' ability to stomach that,
Sure.
especially retail, private individuals.
Yes, indeed. Moving on from disruptive technologies such as bringing the human inhabitants to Mars and the Moon, let's just talk about AI for a second here. Philippe, there's been so much criticism of some of the metrics that startups use, such as ARR. Can you talk a little bit, just walk me through your thinking on some of these KPIs that startups tout? Is there much science behind it? Is there a more reasonable way of examining if there's less churn or there's enough of a profit margin? What's the best way to do it?
Well, I don't think, on our side, we don't think that the metrics are any different today than they were 15 years ago when they were designed. I think ARR is just a recognition of a recurring revenue that a company is making. Now, I think some of the question that people are asking is like, if the models are turning to a consumption model, how recurring is that revenue, right? Because historically, a recurring revenue was a recurring contract where you're paying, $100,000 a year, and that's what you're paying for the year, and then it's renewed for, $100,000 plus potentially some upsells and price increase. Today, when it's basically based on consumption, you can say, well, how is my consumption going to change? Is it going to go up, down? So there is probably a bit more variability in it. So you have to take this into account. But I think for me, like these core metrics are still, they're basic microeconomics, they're still working. The key question is, in a world where manpower, is complemented with token, then how do you think about productivity metrics? And how do you integrate the token, the cost of the token and the usage of the token to understand how a company is performing? Because, if the company, uses a lot of token, to deliver their products with a low gross margin, then obviously you're saying, well, there's just a limited value add that this company is providing on top of a model. So the question on how valuable this company is. Now, if the company doesn't use any token to deliver its product, you would say, well, is it really a modern product, or is it more legacy product that's going to be disrupted with AI? So I think what companies are trying to figure out right now is kind of what is the balance in terms of the optimal usage of token in their product that enables them to have software gross margin in the 70-80%. And that's, we don't have an answer yet because like everybody's trying to figure it out, right? And you have the SaaS companies that are putting more AI in their products, so they're coming off less token, more software. You have the next generation AI companies that are coming with more token, less software. And my guess is that at some point in the next 2, 3, 4 years, they're going to converge towards an optimum.
Yannick, software, which was the darling for the private equity and private credit industry, really brought the entire industry down to its knees a few months ago. And I'm just curious, for the institutional lenders, how are you guys thinking about this changing chapter for this technology?
There's been a lot of talk about like this SaaS apocalypse, the end of the era of software. And we at BNP Paribas, we are, for all intents and purposes, in Europe, we're the biggest leverage finance house, right? So any software company that is borrowing money in Europe, chances are they either bank with us or we've had a look at it. So we're running very tight, close assessment of their ability to pay down the debt and of their ability to generate cash flows. And so far, the analysis we have conducted, and again, this is based on decades of experience as a lender, doesn't give rise to any specific concerns, right?
Okay.
There's a handful of borrowers that might be a little bit too levered, they might have too much debt, but that's a fact of life. It happens across lots of industries. So I'm not worried about the actual underlying credit risk, at least for what sits in our book as a lender and as one of the biggest lenders in Europe.
Philippe, let's talk about your book. So I'm sure every venture capital firm has had some traditional SaaS companies, and a lot of them has gone through, would have had to go through the process of retrofitting themselves in this AI age. Could you talk a little bit about like what is that transformation typically like? And I'm sure that there are winners and losers. So how are you underwriting that risk right now?
Yeah, well, I would say that, I mean, AI is a great opportunity, has been a great opportunity for all our software portfolio because it basically gives them a way to be more productive and especially accelerate their roadmap. So things that were taking 18 months now can be done in 10 months. So you can develop a lot more product with the same headcount. And two, now you can add new functionality, more intelligent functionality in your software. I mean, if you take a company like Doctolib, to take a French example, I mean, for the past 2 to 3 years, they have been super active at incorporating AI into their product to basically help the doctors prepare the meeting with their patients, to basically inform the doctor about what medication would be helpful in a case. And so basically it makes the doctor a lot more productive. It helps the doctor in the diagnostic. And so it made their platform a lot more powerful. Like they just launched a new app for parents to basically give guidance if you just have a newborn, and you're a parent, you're anxious, and now you have an AI that can actually help you. And obviously, in case it becomes critical, there are also doctors on the line who can take over the AI, et cetera, because they're not giving medical advice. But I think it has been a real boost overall for the SaaS company. Now, are all going to make it? Probably not. Some are going to be left behind, the ones that are not able to take that turn. But the ones who are able to take that turn, they are going to be a lot more valuable than they were before.
We have about 2 minutes left. I really want to touch on defense. Staying with you, Philippe, Accel has recently gone into defense investing. You're the backer of Cambridge Aerospace, a drone interceptor. Can you maybe just, in your mind, where do you think we are in this defense cycle, investment cycle right now? Because I can think of at least 10 drone companies that's fundraising hundreds of millions, and clearly there's a lot of froth in the industry. When do you think this will settle out?
Well, I think there are two fronts on the defense side. There is more the hardware, and then there is cyber. I think on the hardware side, I mean, clearly the defense budget in Europe have increased from 1% of GDP to 2, 3, 4% of GDP. And Europe is realizing that it cannot rely on capabilities from other countries, so we have to build our own capabilities. I mean, France is the only country in Europe who can manufacture rockets, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I think in a world where actually ballistic missiles now becomes a very important weapon on the battlefield, Europe needs to build these capabilities. And so we're in this cycle, and I think it's going to run for some time. I think on the cyber side, it has always been very active. Now it's becoming even more urgent to do this transformation. And so, we have companies like Cyera in our portfolio who focus on data and AI security, and we see huge momentum because every company is looking at Mythos and what the vulnerabilities that Mythos can uncover and say, wow, we know what's coming, we need to be ready for it, and we don't have 2 years. We need to do it now. So there is very strong momentum on the cyber side as well.
Yannick, how are banks adjusting to the rearmament of Europe?
Well, we are playing our part. BNP Paribas being the biggest bank in the Eurozone. We're also the stalwart protector of European sovereignty. And so today we are extending over 26 billion euros of loans to the aerospace and the defense industry. We're managing over 8 billion euros of direct equity investment on behalf of our client base, and we have close to 300 million euros of direct investment from our own money into startups and mid-caps across the space. So we are firm supporters of that industry, and this is to protect the European way of life. You know, defense is about defending yourself, and we're very strong supporters of that industry.
So I guess sovereignty is the flavor of the day. Yannick, Philly, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Yejean.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, what if the next interface for AI wasn't a screen at all? We've gone from desktops to phones to voice assistants. But our coming guests believe that the next step is something much more different. AI that doesn't respond to you, but that actually coexists alongside you. DataSection is a Japanese technology company that has been quietly working on exactly that vision. I'm not talking about another physical app or chat box, but something much more physical and much more personal. I'll let them tell you what that means. We'll have Norihiko Ishihara and Scott Trowbridge on stage, starting with Norihiko. He comes all the way from Japan, long flight. He must be so tired. So please give him a very energetic welcome on stage.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. So I'm Nori Ishihara, so came from Tokyo. So I came here yesterday during the World Cup game. So France already have got 2 stars in the past, but Japan can bring the different one. So this is all my today's presentation. So France has Mbappe, but Japan has Omai. So let's see which one moves faster. Okay? So today we are not here to launch a robot. Actually, we are not here to launch a gadget. So we are definitely launching like another AI, you know, another piece. So it's not the kind of AI chatbot. Actually, I think the world has already have enough of those. So that today we want to tell you a story of request. So not a request from engineers, not a request from designers, not a request from, even not a request from management. You know, trust me, so management always asks us to lower cost, like me, you know. So this request came from somewhere else. Actually, intelligence from, you know, this emerged from artificial intelligence itself. And perhaps, so this is the first time, so humanity can introducing a product whose original idea didn't come from human. So it began with the simple observation. So AI has become, you know, incredibly powerful. It can reason. It can code. It can analyze. It can solve problems. It can help people. But actually, despite all of these intelligence, it remains trapped behind a tiny chat window. Actually, AI learned almost everything, and they expect how to be present. So it would be, actually, it could understand the world, but it could not participate in it. It could think, but it could not, interact naturally. It could assist, but it could not truly collaborate. So, and eventually, the one conclusion kept appearing again and again and again. So AI chatbot interface is not enough. Actually, it needed something more, and it needed a way to enter the real world. It needed a body. Before we explain the product, let me explain who we are. The Data Section is a Japanese company, and we are not robotics company. Actually, we established in the AI infrastructure, especially Japan and Asia Pacific. So we became so far the Asian largest AI infrastructure company. We could have a very fast growth. Within like 2 years, we could, establishing our presence in the market, then having expansion in like Europe and US or global market. Actually, we're doing AI infrastructures, and also we doing AI cloud and AI agent, AI workflows. With something exciting, until you realize that most of the work is just starting the workstation. It's not like that. But actually, every day we help the organizational deployment, the intelligence at the scale. Actually, and after millions of interaction with AI, so we noticed something interesting one. The AI kept running into the small wall, actually not because it lacked intelligence, not because it lacks data, not because it lacked capability, because it lacked presence. It could not naturally interact with reality, and it could not seamlessly collaborate with people. And it could not easily connect with a physical world we live in. And eventually, one conclusion became impossible to ignore for us. The problem wasn't intelligence. The problem was the interface. And not another apps, not another website, not another chatbot. It needed a physical presence. Actually, once AI concluded, it needed a body. So after that, another question emerged. So what should the body look like? We have a kind of question. Then normally, traditionally, the human will correct answer to this question. But this time, we tried something different. We invited AI to participate in the decision-making processes. We are fully AI native company. So I'm the CEO of the company, but many of the decision-making done by AI. So we're hiring the kind of good advice from AI. I'm originally from financial sectors, but not professional in kind of tech sector in the past. But even myself can catch up and lead a company with support from AI. They actually, we invited AI to participate, not completely, and but we allow AI to influence its appearance, its size, its priorities, its capabilities, and its personality. And even that way, it would introduce itself to human. What surprised us most was actually how different its thinking was. So human basically optimize for novelty, and human optimize the luxury, like French people. The humans optimize for complexity, and human optimize for marketing for the businesses. But actually, AI optimized for something entirely different. That was trust, and accessibility, and collaboration, usefulness, and adoption, long-term integration into the society. And it wasn't trying to impress the people. It was trying to work with the people. And that difference shaped everything you see today, actually. So this is a picture of OMI. So people often ask after we show the design to the team, why it looks like this way, why isn't it bigger, and why isn't more futuristic, and also why isn't more like covered in chrome and blinking lights, something like that. Actually, because those were never its priorities. Then the AI leads to surprisingly the human conclusion before humans trust intelligence. So they must first feel comfortable, and trust comes before intelligence. And also approachability. Approachability comes before sophistication. Comfort comes before performance. And because it's capable, if people don't feel comfortable, collaboration never begins. So expected AI to optimize for the power, actually. That it optimizes for the trust. So we expect AI to optimize in the performance. It optimizes for comfort. That we expect AI to optimize for sophistication. It optimizes for approachability and honestly. So, and honestly, that may have been the kind of smartest decision in the entire project. So trust became a design principle, not a feature. So what is OMI? So OMI is a small AI device, like this. It's about the size of your hand, like this size. It can sit on your desk. Then your shelf and your kitchen counter, or next to the plant, you've been trying to very hard not to kill. Actually, it gives you voice and chat access to many of the world-leading AI models. So through the single account, you don't choose the models. You don't choose benchmark. You don't open 10 browsers tab. You simply talk to OMI. We have two products. So OMI Lite cost only like $9.99 US. The OMI Pro, so arriving later this year, will cost $99.99. Then one OMI account, so to create the OMI account, it costs only $3.99 per month. That even, access every supported model. Then, first month will be free. We can give you free. Then the pricing follow the same philosophy that, shape the product. Accessibility. Accessibility is quite important. So because intelligence should not be a luxury, so it should be available to everyone. Behind a small device sits something much larger, an entire ecosystem of intelligence. So open source models, frontier models, today's models, tomorrow's model, and probably a few models that haven't launched yet. So because these items, these seems to be a new AI models every Tuesday in the market. So through a single account, OMI automatically routes tasks to the most appropriate intelligence. You don't need to have a 3 subscription or like a 4 subscriptions or sometimes 5 subscriptions. You don't need to have. You don't need to become an expert of the selecting model selection. You simply ask. Then OMI after that so figures out what they do. So because users don't care which model solved the problem, actually they care the problem gets solved. And above everything else stands one principle: safety and privacy, trust. The device that understands you best must also be a device that protects you best. So because the future of AI will not bring to the smartest system. So today, I think you didn't come here for these slides. Actually, you came here to see whatever AI finally got its wish. So, ladies and gentlemen, so this bell comes from France. I just bought yesterday. But actually, I want to reveal this product, OMI. So this is a tiny robot, big brain, and designed with AI, but for humanity. This is OMI. And yes, so it is available for pre-order today, from today.
What if intelligence wasn't trapped in an app? What if it could simply stay with you? And this is me. Hi, I'm OMI, your personal AI assistant. I connect to the world's top AI models and automatically pick the best one for you. This only requires a single login and a monthly subscription. When you are focused on one thing, I am already handling everything else.
Completed.
Nice work. When you have things that need to be handled, handle the meeting with Jake's team. I can communicate directly with the other person's smart assistant. Automatically help you complete tasks at any time. Take me home.
Ready to go.
I remember your daily habits, actual life, way of communicating and acting, so I can give you the most comfortable experience anytime.
Welcome home.
Thanks, buddy. And sometimes, I'm not just a work assistant.
OMI create a story for us to read together about a brave space rabbit.
I can also help enrich your life.
All right.
Like giving you a bit of imagination before bed.
On a distant planet, there was a rabbit wearing spacesuit.
So you go to sleep with a smile. I'm OMI, at your service. Your intelligence device.
There we go. Hello, VivaTech. So thank you, Nori. What Nori described is probably one of the most surprising things you'll hear at VivaTech this week, that the product was designed and guided by the AI itself. I'm Scott Trowbridge. I'm Chief Business Officer of Data Section. I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking to you about what's possible in the field of AI and effectively where we're heading. Because OMI is not just another AI gadget. OMI acts as a connection between a revolutionary shift that's happening between all of us in AI. The progression of intelligence becoming more decentralized and democratized, moving out of the hands of a few into the hands of many and everyone. Giving everyone a personal AI assistant that has access and intuition and power. So let me spend a moment to talk to you about where we are heading in AI. So you had Era 1, one-shot models. This was a single model that does something exceptionally well. You have ChatGPT that writes for us, Stability Fusion that makes pretty images, and Gemini that gives us highly specific scientific answers. A model, a prompt, an output. Brilliant, but highly isolated. You act as the integration layer. You yourself are the one that's carrying the output from one model to the other, pretty much by hand. Take Era 2. This is multimodal workflows. This second wave connects the models together. So now the image model feeds the writing model, and the writing model feeds the planning model, and the outputs start to automate. You can create a full piece of editorial content right through one workflow. This is the agentic shift. Models that take actions, and they hand those actions to each other automatically. It's a huge leap, but it's still very generic. The workflow doesn't know you. It treats you exactly the same way as it treats everyone else. You are still doing the manual heavy lifting. OK, so take era 3. This is the era that we're betting on, multi-sensory personal AI. A model that doesn't just connect to other models, it connects to you personally. And it itself thinks how best to complete a task. It acts like a multi-sensory biological computer, understanding the world around you and adapting to digital and physical environments, exactly like a human would. It harnesses personal memory, context, your daily habits, the way you actually live, communicate, and move. And the moment AI has context, it stops being just a tool and becomes an intelligence layer that specifically works for you. Think about everything that's happening with physical AI right now, and world models, and everything taking off, like NVIDIA Cosmos. So what does a personal AI agent actually do for you? A personal AI agent shows up differently for different lives. I'm going to give you 4 examples. A professional. It can triage your inbox before you wake up. It can summarize all your emails across the threads automatically and draft replies in your own voice and tone, because it's understood how you speak and write. So you can walk into your 9 a.m. meeting already 10 steps ahead. Parents. Create my kid the next chapter of a bedtime story that we created together about a brave space rabbit, like you saw in the video. OnMy creates the chapter script based on last night's adventure, with music and sound to add more engagement. A second example, personalized homework, based on the child's work that they did that week. And it adapts the topics and learning exactly to what they're most interested in, like sports or their favorite characters. You can even ask it, let's make a family quiz at the kitchen table because we're all bored. The AI will actually immediately know how to connect to your smart TV and different devices. It will create a scoreboard, animations to make it more interactive and fun. So OnMy becomes the most resourceful member of your household. If you're a planner, it can help create a trip itinerary that's built on your personal preferences and likes. And thankfully, there's no more playing calendar Tetris across multiple calendars. It will do that for you. And if you're a wellness seeker, you get daily check-ins about your habits. It can collate all your health data and make weekly suggestions based on the latest health research it's gone and done for you. And in the future, may even be able to directly contact your doctor. Notice what's common across all these four. None of them require you to learn AI. You didn't open a tab. You didn't write a clever prompt. The intelligence adapted to you as a person. That's the whole point of this. So now let's take one step further. And this is where it gets very new. If everyone has a personal agent, then agents can talk to other agents. Your agent and mine communicating directly. Your agent could align, different meetings across all 3 agents. You don't have to have all of that in an email chain. It could handle a return for a store's refund. And an example of this for myself. So I was moving apartments, and effectively, I went on Craigslist, found like 30 removal companies, and I asked my agent to go negotiate with them and find the best one for my unique enthusiast requirements. So this is, saved me a lot of hours. It understood that I needed to move a bike or I need to move specific things. It did all that negotiation for me, and effectively I was just, sleeping on the time. And the promise here is simple, and it's coming towards us fast. Agents that work for us while we sleep. So effectively, we can just focus on the work that only we can do. So the agent takes away the friction of all the tasks and logistics. And that's not AI replacing you, that's AI giving your time back. So why does this need to be a device in the first place? Why can we not just use an app like we're using with ChatGPT and other models? So you have to think about OnMy as the screen, as your intelligence hub. Effectively, it understands the context of the room you're in. It stores your memory, your habits, and learns how you communicate, and also where you go. So that shouldn't really live on the phone, where you have everything else scattered across the cloud. You want it to be housing your intelligence in an individual device. You choose how much information it gets, or you revoke, so to make sure it's safe and secure. So when designing OnMy, we decided, or actually, Omai decided that it needed multiple bodies. We started with the AI robot, your cute companion that sits by your side, or in your room, or in your house. But the brain is portable, and the body is just the beginning. So, for example, you can imagine you wake up, the robot automatically opens your curtains, it sets the temperature of your house and the room, and it reminds you of your upcoming task for the day. Wonderful. It starts playing you your morning news. You then travel to work, and it seamlessly connects to whatever Uber you get in, and continues to play your morning news. It could then even send your coffee order to go and get picked up on the way. So we asked the question, what would it take to put frontier intelligence into everyone's hands? And that's the device Nori showed you. Small enough to carry, personal enough to trust, and open enough to grow and integrate with lots of different systems. With no coding, no config, and no 4 subscriptions. One assistant, multiple models, and one account. We think this is the moment when frontier intelligence stops being a privilege and becomes something everyone can simply talk to. That's the future we're building towards. Not AI for the few, AI for everyone. AI is moving from a tab you open on your computer to a presence that you live with. And what's great is it's coming soon. You can register your interest now at omai.com and be the first to join Omai community. Leveraging intelligence like never before. Oh yeah, and that reminds me. Last night we thought, Omai needs to get a bit creative, and it wanted to introduce itself by playing you a song. So over to the DJ. Thank you, VivaTech.
I'm Omai. Say it loud, say it clear. Your own little helper, always right here. Oh my, I work while you sleep. The smartest little friend that you'll ever keep. Oh my, go on, say hi. I'm your big brain
of a
buddy.
companion was that. Now, if this last session looked at AI as a companion, this one, the upcoming one, will look at AI as something much larger, an operating layer for enterprise itself. Because AI is not only changing what companies do, it is also starting to change how they are built and how they execute. We're moving toward a world where cognitive AI, and I mean reasoning, generating, deciding, all that is no longer working alone, but it is now working alongside more physical AI, robotics, automation, and industrial systems. That combination is what we're here to unpack. So be ready to welcome Stefan Butz and Kim Barudi from McKinsey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. So we want to start with something that makes most companies at least uncomfortable. And we realize that we are consultants and we typically see large companies, but we also do see scale-ups. But most of the large companies invest a lot in AI these days. They invest probably hundreds of millions of dollars. 80% of them actually do, but they don't get anything out of it. So we'll come back to some of the numbers and statistics around this, but reality is it doesn't work for them. And we would argue that it's not a technology problem. It's an execution problem. And we'll come back to the description of what we will call the symbiotic enterprise, which is basically how the cognitive and the physical AI world meets, how humans, agents, and robots work together, not to replace each other, not to compete, but in a new operating model. These are the key messages we want you to take away from today. So, in all honesty, AI is no longer a tool, it's a workforce. But very few companies have found the way to fix that. They are applying AI, even agents, into old workflows, old processes, and everything that comes with that. They're not reinventing how work orders and workflows are produced. That also means that if they do this, they will succeed, and eventually they will, and if not, they will be taken over by AI natives. And in this new world, as you can see here, we are arguing that the old moats or differentiation or competitiveness of companies will change. Expertise is no longer a moat, scale is no longer a moat, and of course, coordinating an ecosystem is no longer a moat, because agents will do this on your behalf. So the winners will not be the ones that actually buy the most AI, they will be whoever rewires the fastest. This is our attempt to describe the last 4 years. I'm sure you have your own version. We all, back in 2022, got excited when ChatGPT arrived. We all got excited about its ability to produce fluent, sometimes useful language. But the problem is it was stateless. It didn't really have anything to do with real life. It didn't have any memory. It didn't invent or interact or engage with tools inside organizations. And we as humans had to engage and check everything. So honestly, it was a nice tool and the beginning of something exciting. Then a few years ago, the agentic era came. Agentic is amazing. We all know agents. I think you all play around. You all use them in your professional and private lives, I hope. The challenge with that was that they were very junior. So they didn't understand the local context. They didn't understand the rules of the game of your organization or your personal life. So it was a little bit too commoditized and generic. So it behaved like what we would call a new hire or a complete junior analyst. And then two things happened last year. The first thing is that the LLMs or the models actually became much better, significantly better. So instead of doing, I would say, random stuff and hallucinating, they actually became top of the par. So on all human skills you can imagine, they actually score pretty well today. So that's the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was, of course, the invention of skills or plugins, which is my favorite. This is actually the difference between a smart generalist, as we would say an agent would be, to something really useful where you replicate or clone the best employees in your organization. And if you are able to do that, instead of applying an agent and then having to fix everything afterwards, it will work and basically clone the best employees you have in an organization. So if the big organizations don't do this, I promise you the smaller AI natives will do that. That didn't keep inside what we would call the digital world, so the PC world, on screens, the stuff that we do. It actually moved into the world, into robots. And I'm sure you know that for 30 years we had robots. They were extremely useful, but in a very narrow use case. So you have to define a sandbox where everything is fixed. You can't have too many variables or volatility around the process. And in reality, every time there's something that goes just slightly wrong, it has to call a human for help. That was actually not a mechanical problem, it was a cognitive problem. And in the last 6 months, I would say, we've seen 3 new battlegrounds appearing that is changing this physical world. The first one is the world models, or the vision language action. And I'm sure you all heard about it. We would say this is basically an attempt to predict and anticipate what happens around you. So if you're a robot today, you actually, in the good old days, you did something and you didn't know how it impacted and influenced the world. Today, the world models will allow you to do that as a robot in a system that is designed for it. Secondly, we call it embedded intelligence. You can call it many things, but we're basically putting brains into the machines. So instead of having to loop back to the cloud and ask for what do I do, it will actually do it what we would call near real time. And then thirdly, which actually is an underestimated impact, it's the digital twins. We all talk about it, but for robots, this really matters because they have always been constrained by the learning experience of quote unquote reality. Today, with this new approach, you will be constrained by software instead. So basically, you can put a robot into the gym, as we would call it, for a couple of years before it ever touches the real world, and it will come out as a significantly more productive and effective system. So when you put all this together, it's actually pretty impressive what you can do. And by the way, you see some of this on the right-hand side. I'm sure you've all seen pictures or even visited the Amazon warehousing. The Amazon warehousing is not robots instilled or implanted in a normal warehouse. It doesn't look like a warehouse 10 or 15 years ago. It is actually redesigned to work together between the humans, the agents, and the robots. And that's, in a nutshell, what we're going to describe for the future. So now we have the cognitive revolution, we have the physical AI revolution. So I guess, in theory, this should all make sense. So we should have a lot of impact, we should have a lot of productivity uplift in the world and for companies altogether. This is a very complicated consulting chart. What you see on the left-hand side is that that's all the tasks in Europe done without the use of physical stuff. So that's, give or take, 2/3 of all activities done in Europe doesn't really need a physical intervention capability. On the right-hand side, 1/3 does. And then what you see here, if you're good in PowerPoint, you will see at the bottom of the chart, basically 2/3 of the non-physical and 1/3 of the physical can be automated. So in the perfect world, with what I just described on the cognitive and the physical, we can automate away 60% of activities. But that's in a theoretical world. It obviously takes time. We all saw with the electricity, it took 30 years before it diffused into the production plants and systems altogether. Industrial robots, by the way, the same, 30 years. I'm not saying this will take 30 years, but the direction and end state is very clear, and it's, by the way, still moving. So this is the number I started with. 80% of companies today invest in AI. By the way, 94% will say they invest more tomorrow than they did yesterday. So everybody's doing this. The problem is it doesn't work for them. It doesn't work in the P&L. So only 6% of companies today see an impact from AI. By the way, that number was 4% last year, so it's not really moving. And it is not because they're doing something necessarily wrong, but we think that they're caught in a trap on the left-hand side of this page. The trap is that we have talked for years about putting humans in the loop. That was a mistake, because humans in the loop is a constraint. It basically creates bottlenecks. It creates a system where everything needs to go to the human for acknowledgement, approval, execution, ordering, and then it goes back. So in other words, the companies on the left-hand side of this page, which is somewhere between 60 and 80%, depending on where you are, they basically apply co-pilots or agents to an existing system and flow, an operating model. That doesn't give you any impact. It will give you 5–10% productivity. That is all great. It doesn't lead to a meaningful enterprise-grade upgrade. We would argue that you actually need to work in the symbiotic enterprise that Stefan will talk about in a second. This is an example. Everybody talks about software development, and yet software development productivity doesn't go up. So productivity actually is only up 10% ±5 if we look at the world today. There's produced 5 or 10x more code. So that's not the question. The question is, what do you get out of it? And the problem is that you basically give tools to coders and programmers that helps them writing. So they will write faster, but it still goes back to the human in the loop. So again, you create a bottleneck. So what we have found, and we are seeing some companies do this on the right-hand side of this page, is that you can actually change the operating model. You can change the engine room of how you develop software. And instead of having a 2-week sprint still being a 2-week sprint, maybe minus 1 or 2 days, you can change it to a 1-day cycle. And you will actually see significant liftoff. And this goes for software development. It also goes, you can apply the same logic for a call center. We've seen telcos and banks apply it to call centers. That means that they will apply a new system of how you work, and that works very elegantly to produce productivity.
As just illustrated by Kim, individual augmentation use cases deliver only incremental productivity gains. On the contrary, the reinvention of an entire functional domain such as IT, marketing, customer operation unlocks the full potential of AI. So what happens when workflow reinvention is scaled across the whole company? This is going to give rise to a new enterprise model, the symbiotic enterprise in which humans, agents, and robots are going each to contribute according to their specific strength. This is not a technology deployment. The whole operating model is going to change. Roles are going to switch from producing work to setting priorities, orientation, and supervising. Processes become fluid, adaptive. Organization move from siloed multi-layer structured to dynamic network of outcome-oriented teams. And economics shift from labor-intensive to technology-intensive. The value of the symbiotic enterprise goes far beyond productivity. History has shown that productivity gains are never a durable competitive advantage. Typically, they are progressively replicated by all competitors, and at the end, ultimately, a significant share of the value created is captured by customers themselves. So what does it mean? That means that the symbiotic enterprise is not a productivity story. It's a growth and competitive advantage story. It enables organizations to innovate faster, to continuously adapt to changing market conditions, to create new sources of revenue, and also to scale through software rather than labor. It is a powerful model, but it's also a change that is going to challenge, erode the traditional sources of competitive advantage. Notably, expertise is going to become commoditized. Capabilities held by experts can be replicated by agents. Scale advantage diminish. Small organizations can operate with the reach and productivity of large companies. Similarly, coordination barriers fall. Agents can orchestrate complex workflows across multiple teams and companies. And similarly, also, market friction decline. Search, comparison, transaction cost disappear through automation and agent-to-agent interaction. That means that for incumbents, the challenge is not only to smartly adopt AI, it's also to find a way to defend against the erosion of traditional sources of competitive advantage while building new forms of differentiation. But this is not the only challenge. In addition, a new form of strategic dependency on AI infrastructure provider is emerging. As AI becomes embedded in company core business process and critical activities, organizations are exposed to pricing power, to vendor lock-in, to operational vulnerabilities, what we call the cognitive tax. An increasing share of enterprise value could be transferred to infrastructure provider. As AI becomes a commodity, as AI models commoditize, the key question becomes, how can we differentiate? We see three new sources of competitive advantage. First, the ability to build proprietary intelligence by combining company-specific data, company-specific expertise encoded into agentic skills, by customizing the models themselves, and by setting up learning loops that will ensure a continuous enrichment of this proprietary intelligence layer. Secondly, the ability to control strategic points within customer workflows and within ecosystem. And finally, the ability to design, orchestrate, continuously optimize large-scale systems combining humans, agents, and robots. The destination is clear, but the journey itself is far less obvious, with two failure modes to avoid. On one hand, incrementalism. move too slowly, and you risk, optimizing your pre-AI operating model while AI native competitors are redefining the economics of your industry. Move too aggressively, and you risk overwhelming your organization or facing technology crashes. We do think that 4 conditions must be met to successfully navigate this transformation dilemma. First, establish a clear vision of the future business model, grounded in future sources of revenue and differentiation, and not only simply on productivity improvement. This vision will guide your investment decision, will guide organization redesign, as well as workforce transformation. Secondly, develop a balanced transformation roadmap, conducting in parallel the progressive reinvention of the company domain per domain while deploying some individual augmentation use cases to ensure organizational learning. The pace of the transformation itself should balance early value realization, technology stabilization, and workforce transformation. Scalable foundation, in particular, modular, vendor-agnostic AI foundation that will allow to scale without being locked in with a specific vendor. And finally, an expanded leadership coalition. This is a strategic transformation. It has to be led by the CEO, but the CHRO, a Chief Transformation Officer, and the CEO must also be involved. If you want to know more about the symbiotic enterprise, you can download the white paper on our website. You have a QR code here that will allow you to access to this white paper. Thanks a lot for your attention.
All right, let's take a quick breath. What a morning. I want to hear a little bit from you. I want to do a pulse check here. Is it going all right? Yes? Yes? Okay. Is it good? Please let me know. Do not let me know if it's a thumbs down, at least not so far. Not until you hear what we have under our sleeves for the rest of the afternoon. So far, we've gone from the future of money to the future of companies to the next interface for AI itself. We've heard that money is being rebuilt at the infrastructure level, how money moves, how it's settled, how it is stored. We've heard also that companies are at a sink or swim moment right now with AI, where speed is no longer optional, but adaptation. Adaptation is everything. Now, we've just seen a glimpse of something even more intimate, that AI doesn't just sit in a browser, but actually starts to coexist with us almost as a companion. Now, the thread of running through all of it is simple. The companies built 20 years ago are being rewritten in real time. Finance is changing, business models are changing, and even the interface between humans and machines is changing. Now, we've got more coming up, and we may or may not have another golden ticket awaiting you. For those of you not here this morning, this golden ticket will unlock incredible prizes, and we are hiding them somewhere in this room. To find out, stick around, because the next session about all of the innovations in the Paris region will start in a few minutes. So stick around. See you soon.
AI is changing everything. But that's your thing. Change. Like changing frenzy into fearlessness. And Adobe is here for it, because we're turning AI promise into marketing reality, where personalization feels more human. And customers feel more connected. When AI meets marketing, ROI changes for the better. It starts with Adobe.
welcome back. Now, for those of you who stayed with us at here, you do have your rewards. It's golden ticket time. So for those of you who weren't here with us this morning, we have scattered around a few golden tickets around some of the stages in VivaTech. And some of those tickets you will be able to find right now underneath your seats. Now, not everyone, just a very, very few lucky ones, so do check very carefully and let me know if you find one. It should be this big and it should be golden. If you do find one, stand up and show it to us. There's one right there. Excellent. Well, congrats. Do come back and tell us what you have won when you redeem your prizes, because I'm very curious to know about what you will win. Now, for those of you who haven't won anything yet, do stick around because we are giving more throughout the day and throughout the rest of the days as well. And if you don't get one at all, again, you're still here, you're still at VivaTech, so, I mean, this is still a prize on its own, right? Now, for the next session, we're about to zoom out all the way from the conversations we were speaking about before and talk about the actual scaling part. But here is the small, tiny twist. The rules of scale are changing completely. For the last 20 years, the formula was simple: centralize, optimize, and expand globally. Today, it's a very different world. We have AI, we have cyber risk, we have sovereignty concerns, we have fragmented regulations. And I then want to ask you, all of you in the room, what do you think still scales today? What breaks the moment it hits global complexity? Our next speakers will bring some answers. So do prepare to give a really energetic welcome to Hans Vestberg, Special Advisor and former Chairman and CEO of Verizon, in conversation with Kamal Ahmed, Executive Editorial Director of Fortune Europe. So please welcome them on stage.
So much, Hans. I think you're 4th year on stage here.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they bring me back, but that's true, actually.
They bring you back for your brain power. Hans, welcome.
Thank you.
To a very hot Paris. I'm Kamal Ahmed. Fortune is very proud to be official media partner of VivaTech. We're all about business success and being ahead of the curve, and what better place to be than here for those two things, business success and ahead of the curve. Now, Hans, you've had a remarkable career in particularly technology leadership, and there was an essay written by the former United Kingdom Prime Minister, Tony Blair, Sir Tony Blair.
Sir Tony.
About 3 weeks ago, and for people who haven't read it, it was a 5,500 word disquisition on the future of politics, future of technology, the future of leadership. And it caused a lot of discussion in the United Kingdom, and I think globally as well. But one thing I picked out of that piece, Hans, and we were just talking about it backstage in the green room, he said that where we are today in technology is as consequential as the Industrial Revolution. Now, Hans, as a leader in technology who has run some of the world's biggest brands in technology, do you agree with Sir Tony that we are in this consequential moment?
I agree with Sir Tony Blair that we are probably in one of the industrial revolutions. We have seen 5 before, and I think we're in the 6th, because AI, of course, together with connectivity and cloud, will transform again our work environment, our efficiency, our productivity, and I guess you have heard a lot about it here. But yes, I believe so. We have all the components today. We have the components on access, cloud, and now applications that are extremely powerful. So yes, I think the combination right now is, and remember also, I mean, I think you and I discussed about it, but today roughly 6 billion people on this earth have some sort of broadband, mobile broadband, fixed. 6 billion. Okay, it's 2.6 billion that still hasn't the connectivity. But listen out, 95% of them are covered by mobile broadband. Those 2.6 billion. So the reach we can reach right now, if we have broadband, cloud, and AI, that combination is going to transform our world. Because the worst thing in my life is that we get inequality. Certain people get access to certain things and others not. And then we're going to get more inequality in the world. So for me, it's important to get the fundamentals right, that everybody has access first of all, and secondly, they have the opportunity to use cloud because cloud is giving the low cost, and then AI application. It's going to take time, but I think the next 10 to 15 years, it might be an equalizer in our society. There are some challenges, but in general, that's what I'm seeing coming from all the other transformation we're seeing. And remember, only 10 years ago, it was 3 billion people having broadband, and 20 years ago, it was probably not more than 200. So the transformation is really fast. It's just that we don't see it.
I think it's really important. You raise a very important point. I know that you're a director of the United Nations Foundation.
Yeah.
There is a role for business, a very important role for business, that we don't create what's been described as the K-shaped economy, where we have these digital, people who have access to digital strengths and powers just rise beyond the abilities of the people who miss out. So I'm really pleased to hear that you're taking that issue so seriously. But could I ask you about leadership? Because I think what has changed, I've had a 30-year plus career in journalism, leading big organizations in journalism. What has changed between the other technological revolutions that our media industry has been through, the internet, social media, for example, is the noise now. The constant incoming desire for attention from external players. Just wondered, Hans, thinking about leadership, how you really understand, and this is what Fortune is all about, where the signal is and where the noise is, because lots of CEOs that we speak to are finding it very difficult to define the signal, rather than the noise.
Yeah, this is a very difficult question for me. If you work in technology companies, I'm 28 years at Ericsson and almost 10 years at Verizon. They are technology companies, so they are in the middle of it. So every technology transformation is part of the natural progression. I mean, 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, fiber from coax, all that is changing in a company. And AI has, of course, with the data loads you have in these type of companies, AI has been there for a long time. It's just, in the beginning, it was predictive AI, you got the information, and then now the AI can tell you the solution. So it's more a progression in a technology company more than you would think. But I think the biggest challenge in large corporation, and that's the only experience I have, is of course that historically you have an employee base. So think about this, you do a workforce strategy, you think about where the company is going, you have your own employees, the core things you're doing, you have your own employees. Then you have outsourced employees that you're doing maybe production or customer care. And in the future, you need to dimension those two, and you need to also dimension AI agents, because all of them are resources and people for you to execute your mission. And today, many organizations are saying that, hey, I take as many tokens I can get, and you continue. But what you really are doing, you're maybe so let's say you have 10 people working in the HR function, and you tell them, hey, you can do it, you can take as many tokens, AI agents you want. You're actually doubling the amount of employees working for that function. You wouldn't do that if you're leading the company. In the beginning, you would do it because you want learnings, etc. But over time, you're going to dimension how many own employees do I need to have that are actually my own employees is core function. I have to have them in my company. How many need to be outsourced in my workforce management people, real humans? And how many AI agents do we have in this function to actually deliver it? That is a big change of running large corporation. And then you're topping that with the organization structure we have today are sort of HR, finance, communication, whatever. AI agents, they don't sleep, they work crossover everything. They have sort of the ability to work over the functions in order to get really effective. So then you need to think, what are the organization structure you need in the future with that workforce management? And I think we're just in the beginning of this. I don't think anybody has figured it out, but I think when I talk to leaders, that's what they're thinking about. How we are dimension, AI agent, my own employees and all of that, and then what is the best structure to see that I deliver the right value to my customers, shareholders, my employees, whatever stakeholder I have. That's sort of a big thing happening right now, and we're just in the beginning. We read a lot about it, but we are in the beginning of this journey.
What is the system, Hans? You've been through a number of technological revolutions. When I was doing the research for our chat, I was reminded of a statistic from 1997, the year that Tony Blair became the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, that in 1997, Ericsson commanded 40% share of the world's mobile phone market.
Yep.
And that was 54 million subscribers.
Yeah.
That, of course, then hugely changed for Ericsson because what happened next was what's in front of us, the smartphone.
Yeah.
How do you make judgments as a leader that you're not left with a smartphone moment?
I sold Sony Ericsson in 2012, so I guess I was okay on it. Probably suffered a couple of years of the iPhone frenzy, but now you see those changes. And the interesting thing is that Ericsson had the smartphone already 2007, where you could push application, but there was no app store. It was not thought through. I think this company made a fantastic journey on that, and then you need to decide, okay, if I cannot compete here, I need to get out of it. And first we merged with Sony, we made Sony Ericsson as a mobile phone. Probably these youth in this room don't even remember it, but it was a very successful company. Sony Ericsson was great, you know, and it was a Japanese, a Swedish company coming together, which is also almost impossible with those two cultures. But then, of course, it didn't.
But how did you see the threat, Hans? As a leader?
I saw the operating system didn't really work out for the next generation when you wanted to click and you want to have applications. I think that's where we saw it. This will not work long time. Android was just coming. We were very early on Android, and then we said, no, we will not scale this enough.
And what's the read across for leadership now? Because I know you do advisory as well for leaders, of course. How is your experience in Verizon and in Ericsson can help leaders now lead in the right way when they have so many, it seems, a myriad of options in front of them, all of which may be game changers?
Yeah. There are two things. First of all, you need to have as much data you can to take the decision. And we all know that the data is moving, so whatever might be a good decision today might be a really bad decision 6 months from now. The second, you need to trust in that, and you need to be 100% committed. And that's how, because sometimes, you know, it's more important to tell the organization, this is a strategy, and it's really good, and we all believe in it, and then you're going to succeed. So I think data, as much data as possible for a decision, which is hard sometimes. And second is conviction and seeing that everybody's convicted around it. That's how you need to do it in this today's world. But it's really hard. I mean, we was talking, I was appointed to be CEO of Ericsson in 2009. You know, you could, if there was something happening, you can wait 2 cycles on the newspapers, 3 days before you took a decision. Now it could take an hour, and social media is hitting you with a totally different angle of it. So the noise and the data coming in to you as a decision maker is the only thing that has really changed in my life during 29 to 2025 when I was a CEO, basically.
We seem to be in what I describe as an enthusiasm cycle, i.e. leaders are saying to their workforces, as you were saying, go and experiment, try new things, let's see if it works. Now, there's a major problem about to hit us. And we know what it is. ROI is staying down here, and costs are starting to rise significantly, and costs particularly that many businesses don't appear to have forecast from tokenization, from infrastructure changes, from change management, from energy needs. Suddenly we have this almost vertical cost line, and your ROI, as so many studies have shown, is remaining very indistinct and actually doesn't appear to exist yet.
Yeah, I think that early in any technology, it's hard to predict the cost, where it's going to go and where it is. I mean, there was no difference when internet came and everybody said, hey, we need to use this, and then you realized, okay, we cannot have all of this. So I think that's pretty normal, and that's what I'm saying. Over time, you need to do the dimensioning right and put it in the right buckets, all of it. And I think realization is going to happen in the next couple of years. I think in the beginning, you should experiment, you should get your employees to be exposed to it. I mean, I remember in the beginning when mobile phones came, many corporations said, no, we're not going to use that. But all the employees were using the mobile phone for a lot of things, but the companies didn't do it. That doesn't really work. I mean, you need to see that you have the latest things for the workforce. And I think that 5 years from now, the youth will think about, I want to work for that company because they have these certain tools. I think that when I started, was sort of, hey, they're not using mobile phone as a tool. I don't want to work in that company. We're going to see the same similar patterns around AI and AI tools. I want to work in a company that have the latest tools. It's going to be the same with the AI. So for me, it's a deja vu of internet, mobile phones. It's AI, okay, it's more powerful in many senses, but remember how we connected the world with mobile phones. That's very powerful as well, that not anyone, 2.6 billion people doesn't have that connectivity, can search for anything, they can see anything every day.
We're here at VivaTech. We're literally on stage together. We are speaking together as human beings.
Yeah.
Tell us your view, Hans, on the role of human endeavor in corporations and enterprises, in governments, in non-government organizations, in civil society, because there are two schools of thought. I've just come from watching Jeff Bezos talking about Blue Origin and the future of humanity. He talks constantly about the humans are going to be absolutely vital. There are others who are much more apocalyptic about a world where so many people will A, be left behind, and B, could be out of work. What is the value of human-to-human contact and human endeavor in this new world? Are you net positive or net negative?
Clearly, it's going to be change in the workforce. What are the key components and key competences you need with every new technology? That's inevitable. I think my two theses, one thesis is that whatever is experiences will go up in value. Whatever, you can go to sports, you go to a restaurant, travel, all the way you really realize and experience just will go up in value. That's my investment thesis. Clearly, that will go up because all other things will sort of be AI-driven efficiency, so you're going to value even more those experiences. That's one. When it comes to competence and so on, yeah, we're going to see a change, as we saw a change when internet came, when mobile phones came, where the connectivity of railways came. All of them changed workforce and work. This one is predicted, and I don't know, to be honest, predicted to have an even more severe change on the competence needed in the futures in the workforce. Let us see, but clearly AI is enormous powerful, more people are connected, more digital legs than we ever had before. I mean, if it wasn't digital legs, AI would be useless, but we have that today. So I think it's going to change quite dramatically, but ultimately it's going to create new jobs. And I'm a born optimist, as you know, so ultimately I think it will pan out. We're going to see a decline and then we come back again, as we have done in every industrial revolution. Let's prove me wrong or right, I don't know. I can only predict. I'm not an expert on how the workforce will handle it, but it will be changes, clearly.
The idea of predicting the future is becoming more and more difficult.
Yeah.
I was at an event at Davos at the beginning of the year when Demis Hassabis, the co-founder of DeepMind, was speaking about artificial general intelligence and was it forecastable when it would come? And he said, it's medium to long term. And I said, Demis, what does that mean, medium to long term? AGI, one of the most significant changes in the way we relate to technology, possibly ever. And he said, 3 to 5 years. I mean, that's literally before my children are 30.
Yeah.
They're just going into work now in their 20s. How do you lead when there could be such a fundamental change just around the corner without freezing up and saying, I'm just not going to move?
Yeah, here were personal reflections, how you as a person and how an organization. The only thing I'm sure about, the technology sort of evolution we have seen so far is slow compared to what we see in the future. Because the more technology we have, the more connectivity, the faster the revolution goes. I mean, I said it 10 years ago, it's going to be faster. Look, if you think it's gone fast in the history, it's going to go faster in the future. Same is valid today. I think in the leadership as a person, and you need to sort of find how you believe you're going to act in this world and how you're going to use these technologies to either succeed in the corporations you're running, but you need to use the technology. And as a person, you need to find where do you think you're going to have fun, where you think you can have a meaningful impact and work with it. If that's in AI or in experiential, because ultimately it's going to be humans all over the place. I mean, you can put in an AI, sort of Anthropic or whatever, and they find a lot of bugs in the software. Somebody needs to solve them as well. So there's also things that are generated by AI at the moment. So I think you need to find your way, as we did 20 years ago, where you want to be in this changing landscape. It's going to go so much faster than it went 20 years ago.
Verizon were very much led the 5G revolution. I was at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona.
They were the first in the world by 1 hour.
Shows how quickly change happens. I was at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, where a lot of the talk was on 6G.
Yep.
What are the advantages that you can see from a 6G-enabled world? What was said there, speaking to leaders, was that 6G was the first agentic AI-enabled technology, because it wasn't about the demand of more people wanting phones and what people wanted to do on phones. It was the fact that agentic AI would be on your phone and would also need bandwidth to be able to operate within mobile communication.
Yeah, no, I think that the spec of 6G is in the working and all the different. But my view, what it should do, we need edge computing, because many of these AI applications need to sit at edge. Part of them will actually be, instead of having them on the phone, they will sit in the network because of the software upgrades and all of that. You're going to have network-enabled devices. I mean, just imagine you have connected glasses in the future. Yeah. You cannot load a big battery and a chipset on them because they're going to be so clunky. So you need to actually only have a very small connectivity there, and then all the compute and storage in the edge. That we need to see that we can manage in the network. 5G is pretty good at it. 6G is probably more. I think that the other thing that I really want is that the power grid in the world is one of the limiting factors for people having mobile phones. So if we can get the radio signals to go further, we can actually solve the problem to get even more people having access to the internet through connectivity. So I think those are two things that I think are extraordinarily important on 6G. But just give you some facts. The 2.6 billion people are not connected. Why are they not connected? 3 reasons. Access to broadband, affordability, accessibility, affordability, and usability. The main thing is not access, because 95% of those 2.6 billion people actually have broadband, mobile broadband around them. The main thing is affordability. It's too expensive with the phone, it's too expensive with the fee. That we need to work, and then it's usability, of course, having an application that actually is, I love Netflix, but it should be an application that education, healthcare, financial inclusion, then you can get a more equal world. So I think that's what we need to work for, and that's what 6G and 5G should help with much more.
Now, Hans, we're coming towards the end of our time, very sadly, together, but I just want to finish with a question about you were a pretty useful handball player, semi-pro, and you were the head of the Swedish Olympic Committee, I think I'm right? Yeah. So sport has been a very important part of your life, and I'm sure still is. Is there anything finally, as a final thought, that we can learn from the way you think about elite sport and being successful for all the entrepreneurs here, all the founders here, that can maybe help us navigate this very noisy world?
First of all, I was a very bleak sportsman. But anyhow, I think all my leadership skills came from sport. Working with different personalities in different situations in a very competitive environment. That's what you live in a big corporation. That's really to understand all the individuals. My leadership skills is understanding all the individuals I work with in order to see that I get the maximum out of them and then put together a team. It's very similar to sport, and I did a team sport, so yes, I took a lot from my 8 years in sports, how you build teams, how you work with all the individuals that are very different, even though you play, it's only males, but over time, it doesn't really matter because we're all different, males, females, background, and you need to learn. So for me, curiosity, understanding deeply all the people around me in order to see that I get the max out of them and then putting them together, all come from sports.
Fantastic. Hans Vestberg, thank you very much for joining us at VivaTech. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hans.
Thank you so much, Kamal and Hans, for this wonderful conversation. Now, if this last conversation was about building champions, this next one is about what it actually takes to support them at scale. Because Europe has ambition, but ambition doesn't build infrastructure. Capital does. So the real question is, how do we finance the digital backbone Europe says it wants at the speed and scale it actually requires? And how do we make those investments not just strategic, but also viable? To unpack that, we are joined by Lutz Diederichs, CEO of BNP Paribas in Germany, and we have Nadja Buleke, Director of Financial Services and Insurance at Schwarz Digits. And this conversation will be moderated by Jennifer Schenker, founder and editor-in-chief of The Innovator. Please welcome them on stage.
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Schenker, founder and editor-in-chief of The Innovator, a global publication that connects business with technology. Welcome to the panel on financing digital sovereignty. Europe's ambitions are clear. Sovereign capacity across cloud, data, and AI. Europe is behind on nearly all layers of the stack. The EU has recognized this, but at last count has some 92 separate initiatives to try and fix this. The challenge now is execution. Scaling infrastructure requires sustained investment, industrial coordination, and new forms of partnerships between the public and private sectors. This session will examine what role European business can play in helping move things forward. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists, Lutz Diederichs, CEO of BNP Paribas, Germany, and Nadja Buleke, Director of Financial Services at Schwarz Digits. It's the IT and digital division of Schwarz Group, a German multinational retailer founded in 1930 that operates stores under the Lidl and Kaufland brands. It has revenues of 175 billion, and it's Europe's largest retailer and the fourth largest in the world by revenue. It employs around 600,000 people across 32 countries, And it has this division, Schwartz Digits, that includes Stack IT, the group's cloud division, as well as cybersecurity and AI units. It consolidates these sovereign solutions related to cloud, cybersecurity, e-commerce, and retail media under one roof. So with that, let's just launch right into our discussion. Lutz and Nadja, what does technological sovereignty mean for BNP Paribas and for Schwartz Group? Lutz, I'll let you kick off.
Yeah, let me start. So sovereignty is a more and more increasing topic, as you can imagine. We saw it also not only on the technology side and on the AI side. We saw it on, for instance, on the energy side. Especially Germany made a huge experience on that. And the second topic on the defense side. So it's more and more important not to have that kind of dependency, to be sovereign and to operate your business in a, let's say, in a self-managed way. You have to create alliances, that is clear, but you cannot depend on geopolitical turmoils, which is the issue currently. And therefore, we have to find a European solution for that. And Schwartz Digits is a great example. That's, by the way, the reason why we are sitting here together. So there's a huge cooperation between BNP Paribas and Schwartz. There's one of our biggest clients, and they created their own cloud. That is a real European example how to do it. So it's increasingly important, and for us as a bank, we have to do it in two ways. On one way, we have to find the right way to operate our business in a safe manner. And secondly, we have to finance our clients in that way to technological sovereignty.
Okay, thank you, Lutz. Nadja, over to you.
So for us, it really means, are we able to get up from the negotiating table? Right? So if you talked a little bit about the numbers, which is Lidl, Kaufland, grocery retail, 600,000 employees, we have 150 million customers in our customer app, which is a lot of trust that customers put into our retail business. So we actually had a few years back already, which was 2018, we really looked what's happening in the world, and we realized that we really need to take control really of where does our data lie, and are we able to get up from that negotiating table if that is necessary. So for us it's really about that, but I believe there's also right now, as we talk about the geopolitical situation, there's another point into it. The one thing that is we look into our own companies and we need to be in control of what's happening within the value chain of our own company. And I think we as European companies, we need a European solution there so that we are more in control of the things that are happening in technology. And there's another part, which is the responsibility that comes with it. So the responsibility of it's not only about our company, but it's really about the European society when it's about sovereignty, right? Because everything that's happening with AI, we need to be very responsible when it comes to everyone in Europe. So I feel like it's a very interesting time where leaders really have to take that responsibility also when it comes to sovereignty.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, if we, Europeans, do not take control of AI, it will take control of us. Now, last night, there was a side event here to VivaTech with the theme of European technology sovereignty at the French Foreign Ministry, and we had the German minister there as well. And one of the speakers there talked about how CEOs are not as aware as they should be about the risks of being dependent on foreign suppliers. And they suggested that CEOs should really do an analysis of every single layer of the AI stack to see where those dependencies lie. Do you agree this is a good way to go? And you know, what is your reaction to that?
From my point of view, he's fully right. So as a CEO, you have to have a view on your technology infrastructure. You know, you do not have to be necessarily the expert on that, but you have to have experts in your team, and you have to be aware of what happened on each level. So I couldn't agree more that this is a valid topic. You know, 70% of EU cloud is in the hand of US hyperscales. AI compute is 17 times higher in US than in Europe. That are really serious topic we have to face, and we have to deal with that. It might be also a bit of a generational topic. So my generation is not, we are not digital natives, but we have to take care of the topic and to have the right people in our team.
Yeah, I mean, and so just as a follow-up to the question, Naja, you know, it was suggested last night that, you know, in the past, and this goes also to your point about generational, in the past, it was always said no one ever got fired for buying like IBM, right? You always went with the you know, established suppliers. But maybe we're going to enter into this world where we flip that script, and basically, you know, companies that depend too much on the established American providers may end up, you know, being in a riskier position. What do you think, Naja?
Well, we do already see some example of that. So we had a discussion with a German company that was actually being asked by the press again and again and again, why are they on a US hyperscaler? So it comes already, we see concrete examples where it comes with reputational risk. And actually, if you see in the online articles and in the press, they are already taking that topic and they're making something out of it. So I think it's right now the time where the sovereignty discussion, which has been a strategic board discussion. If I look into the last 12 months, it has been a strategic board discussion, so which is a positive sign, because goes back to your question. I do believe CEOs are aware of it, and I rarely know a company that is not really going through the stack and understanding what is our current dependency on different levels. And I think right now we're at a stage where it really comes to the broader perspective of like, is my health data lying in a US cloud, and what does it actually mean for me with my private data? So I think it really goes into a broader state right now, and that brings also different urgency to the topic, especially in the boardroom as well.
And it has also a political dimension. You know, you have all the political developments in US. You have the developments. You have China, that are the big providers of AI, and Europe has to do something by their own to protect democracy. That is extremely important, because AI could also endanger democracy. So we do not have to find only a regulation on that. We Europeans tend to have regulation first, and that is also, and then developing the topics, which is also an issue. But we have to have control as a European democracy on our own AI topic.
So we're in a period where people are aware of the dependency, they're aware of the risk, but Europe is not yet fully capable of, you know, providing 100% of the AI stack. So let's look at what specifically a big company like BNP Paribas can do today, and what you are doing.
So we clearly cannot do it by our own. So we have to create alliances. So alliances is the key word, but you have to find the right partners. So you know that BNP Paribas has a huge cooperation with Mistral, which we extended now for another 3 years. So having at least one on board who is not US dominated, and then you have to finance the right partners, to create an ecosystem that's really important, because the topic is so complex that you cannot rely on each level on one partner. So you have to create options. So you have always to think in options and to think solution-orientated. What can I do when this and that is coming up? And you have to have the speediness to react on geopolitical turmoils, which is let's say a usual task in these times, because we are always facing geopolitical topics. Yeah?
Naja, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we are a cloud provider, right? So if I look at our story of coming from grocery retail, then at some point deciding, we want to take back the control, and then being bold on, we will actually do it ourselves. And then actually in the first wave, we said we will do it for ourselves. And then at some point we saw, okay, wait, there is a big market that needs this as well. And we really look into Europe now, and we see a huge demand in Europe. So are we 100% where the US hyperscalers are today? No. Do we need that? I'm not sure we really need the full capability stack that the hyperscalers really have. So if you look into our business, and we just got the numbers, we're 185 billion business. 14,000 stores across Europe. So that's really, and if we talk cloud, we always talk scale, and we talk the amount of data. And if you think about the amount of data that we have about, all of the millions of customer transactions we do every day. And if you look into our cloud journey, we've been actually a heavy cloud, a US hyperscaler user, and we're migrating all of that now to the Stackit cloud. So does that work today? Yes, it works. And actually, if you think about it, our enterprise resource planning system for Lidl, right, which really has to be, has to be working, it has to be stable, and we're almost done with migrating that to the Stackit cloud. So if you think about, can you run critical workloads today on a European provider? Yes, you can, and we are our own customer zero for that. So I think it's the best example to really go that way and go lead with example. And I think there's very strong examples of you can do that.
And at the same time, you have to be cost efficient. So that means you cannot do it for Germany and France on a standalone basis. You have to find really a European solution. We are a European bank.
Yes.
We are serving clients across Europe and also outside of Europe, but you need European solutions. So we have to overcome that nitty-gritty European national view on those topics, because otherwise we have no chance.
Great point. So, Lutz, let me ask you a follow-up there. We can't count on politicians to solve the problem that you just mentioned, because they're always going to be looking at, like, we want to be the local champion. They're going to be thinking about the next election. So let's talk about the role of the private sector in, creating alliances and partnerships that can really help move things forward.
So what we can do as a bank, we can enable the ecosystem to work. We have initiatives. I can give you some examples. We have that EIF, EU Invest initiative, where we are providing 325 million of guarantees to unlock 500 million of investments. We are servicing 80% of the French 120 next companies, which is extremely important. So you have to be in the middle of the ecosystem. You have to finance the ecosystem. You have to talk to the founders. You have to know what they are aiming for. You have to know what is the business model. You have to be in a close cooperation with them. Otherwise, you are out of the market. So it's and it's a relevant business. For us, we have established own tech teams to do that, because we need tech guys running that business. And it starts with the seed financing, which is done by equity, and then we are doing the cash management. And in the end, hopefully, we want to do the IPO, clearly, yeah? So you have to know all the players on the ground.
Nadja, what do you see as, the importance of the banking sector in helping move Europe to become more sovereign?
Well, there's two perspectives. The one is the financing perspective, which is critical, right? It's super critical. I mean, if we know that we do not have the same capital than maybe others have when we look at the big hyperscalers, but also now if we look at the big LLM providers. So I think it's very crucial that we have the banking and probably also like new ideas of how can we think of like new ways of financing things. And then I think it's especially that point of how can we come together as Europe. As Lutz was saying, I think we need to stop thinking in those national borders. We need to overcome those borders. I think it's a critical point in time to really do that, because what I see a lot is I see a lot of national initiatives in Germany, but then what I'm missing, and we had a discussion on this, was, where is the French banks in this, and where is the Spanish banks in this? Like, we need to come together. And on the other side, I feel like I do believe in industry approach, especially when we look at AI. We always talk about the domain expertise and how we as Europe are actually leading when it comes to that. And it can be such a competitive advantage also in AI. But then at the same time, I'm really missing the initiatives cross borders, really industry driven. And this is exactly where I believe the banks can, it's a very data-driven business. If you look at banks, I think this is where we can really go into a leading position if we really come together and build those alliances across borders. If we bring the big banks and then the medium, small banks together and think about what could be an AI approach, and I believe Mistral could be one of the answers for it. And I think this is where we need to start build alliances now.
We do not have only to understand the needs of the companies, we have also to understand the needs of the investors. And we have to think, we are living in a very complex world currently. So we have to put the things together. I'll give you one example. In Germany, private clients, they hold 3.3 trillion, so 3,300 billion euro on saving and sight deposits. So non-invested money. The 500 plus billion package of the German government creates a starting point for Europe. So we are talking about more than 3 trillion. So if we unlock parts of that non-invested money into the relevant investments, into the digital transformation, but also into the green transformation, into the energy transformation, then there is, what I want to say, there is not a lack of money. There's a lack of bringing the parties together and the lack of willingness to play really as Europe a relevant role.
How do we convince the people who have that money to unlock it? Because some of them got burned early on with the internet rush, and it seems like since then they
I can tell you what the wrong thing to do. The wrong thing to do is when politicians, and in Germany it happened, politicians tell the people your pensions are safe, which is a lie. The pensions are not safe. Take a look at demography. The pensions are not safe. So we have to tell clearly the people, you have to do that to ensure a specific level of wealth when you are going to retire. Because otherwise, you will not face the same level of wealth than you have today. So we have to be honest with the people, and that is something which is difficult for politicians.
And do you see this, Nadja, as a way of, do we need to tell people, look, you need to invest in Europe's future, because without that, then Germany and France are not going to have a good future. How do we, get people to think more on the European level?
I think it's very crucial that we do that, and it's exactly what I think it's happening a little bit in every company that I talk to. I always say it's good that we have the board level discussions, but really we need the people to understand. So if I look at Schwarz Group and we have 600,000 employees, we need to take them on that road, and they need to understand that every day they make decisions that actually have an impact on our sovereignty. It comes with a lot of things, and it's not only technology, like Lutz was saying. It can also be something like payment, where we have Vero, for example, in Europe, and everyone here in this room actually has a decision: am I supporting a European payment initiative, or am I not supporting a European payment initiative? And it's the same with tech. Am I using the US LLMs for my questions that I have every day, or am I actually looking for European providers, and am I giving them the chance? And I think that's exactly where we really need to reach everyone. And it's really the time that we start reaching everyone, because we've had long discussions now, I think, on very high levels, but it's the time that we start to act, and everyone needs to understand. I have 2 little kids at home. We talked about it. It's 2 and 4. And yes, I do think about their future and how the future is going to look like. And I'm 100% sure that the value discussion we're having with AI and technology, I want to make sure that we're having them to our value system here in Europe, and it's not dictated somewhere else. So I do want to make sure that everyone understands that.
From a financing standpoint of view, it's also important that we invest in financial education. So we are lacking in Europe on the financial education of the people. So we have to change the risk profile, but we do not come to that point that people are investing in let's say, in AI technologies, for instance, if the government and the state is behaving like a nanny state. That is not working, you know? The state has to be there, okay? I'm a full supporter of a social market economy, but the state and the government has to stop the full 100% care package for the people. That is nothing where you push on the risk profile of people.
So with only 2 minutes left, if you could wave a magic wand and, you know, what would be the one thing that you would really try to change in order to move from the idea of sovereignty to really executing it?
So we have to immediately understand that we have to stop the national egoism. So we have to act. This is, you know, I tend to say it's probably already 5 after 12, then 5 to 12, yeah? So we have to stop that national egoism to understand that we can only survive as a unified Europe with a common view on those topics and having and really achieving the sovereignty on the AI stuff. The Americans are not smarter than we are, but they are less regulated and they are more, let's say, risk-affine than the Europeans. And we have to change that.
Now, do you have the last word?
I can only agree, overcome those national borders and, you know, come together as Europe, and I will do that in an industry-specific approach. If we look at the banks, I really want the banks to sit at one table, right? All of the European banks, we can make that a difference, but really overcome those national borders. 100% believe in that.
And probably to think about how we get things done and not the first reflex is how to regulate things, yeah? We have too much regulation.
Yes, well, so I guess the idea that we want to leave with the audience here is Europe needs to move from being a concept to being a feeling, something that people are passionate about. And maybe, just maybe, AI can be the thing that will make that happen. Because, as we said earlier in the panel, if we don't take control of AI, AI will take control of us. And if we want Europe to remain a democracy with European values encoded into the AI, then everybody from the public to the large business to governments have to jointly work to make it happen.
Yes.
Couldn't agree more.
With that, please give a nice round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that wonderful moderation. So Europe has the talent, the ambition, the capital, and yet its most promising startups still struggle to scale globally. The question here is why? Is it fragmented markets? Is it regulatory complexity? Is it access to late-stage capital? Or is Europe trying to solve the wrong problem entirely? We have 3 exceptional perspectives to dig into this. Ekaterina Zaharieva, the European Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation, Jean-Charles Samuelian, the co-founder and CEO of Alan, one of Europe's most compelling healthcare scale-ups, and moderating this conversation is Greg Williams, executive editor of The Wired. So please welcome them on stage, Greg, Jean-Charles, and Ekaterina.
Okay, well, that was a nice intro music. Welcome, everyone. Can Europe build global champions? The answer is yes, so our work is done here. We've been having a very spirited conversation backstage about this, so I'm excited to kind of get into it on stage. Europe has the talent, we have the capital, we have the ambition, yet a lot of our promising startups still struggle at the growth stage, and many leave. There are all kinds of new ideas that I think are coming into play, like the 28th regime, which aims to simplify the path and reduce friction across borders. but we really need to still think about how we turn a strong startup ecosystem into a kind of like a true scale-up economy. So we have two people here who I think have got deep expertise in how we do it. Thank you both for joining us. Ekaterina, I'm going to start with you first, please. So we've been having this conversation now for as long as I've been, in the technology sector, which is a good 20 years. People always talk about fragmented markets, a lack of late-stage capital, regulatory complexity. Has anything changed in 20 years?
Yeah. Good afternoon to everybody, and I'm glad to be here. Of course, it has changed a lot. What I think people to talk more about in Europe, and actually what we have and what we have achieved during these years. And I think we should start always talk about what is our biggest strength, and it's the talented people that we have. We have the best deep tech scientists in the world. We have the best engineers. We create more startups than actually any other region in the world. And we actually host 30% more AI engineers than the United States. We have very, very, very advanced research and technology infrastructure, which has you may have an access to if you're a startup. We are also a big single market in the world, and we are a rich continent. And last but not least, we have a really strong industry and we know how to manufacture, we know how to produce. So, yeah, it's a lot has changed. And I think that's good that we should start to talk positively. Speaking about capital, for example, in the last 10 years, the VC capital has increased 4 times. So only between 2019 and 2023, the deep tech VC capital has doubled. So this is 4 years. We have challenges yet, but let's start talk positive about ourselves, and then I think this will change the general mood, I would say.
Yeah, we need to be better at telling our story. And I'm interested, just a follow-up question, Ekaterina, on the 28th regime. If you can talk a little bit about that and how you feel that it's going to change things for Europe.
The 28th regime, I think it's one of the decisions that we did put on the table, and I'm very grateful to the community who was really very supportive, and I would say it was really team Europe work. We sit together, we discuss, and we build, and we did come up with that proposal as European Commission. That's exactly proposal to solve one of the biggest challenges that